want to say thank you. My name is Helen Neal Ali, and I am your MC for tonight. And I would first like to welcome those that have been coming to our forums, as well as the new people. For those of you that are new, I would like to tell you a little bit about Sarasota Strong. Number one, Sarasota Strong is a growing group of Sarasota neighbors that are committed to learning about trauma and responding to its impact. And our mission is to promote community-wide trauma awareness through healing, education, action, and leadership. Our vision is to create a community that cares for itself. Okay, number one, I'm sorry, I skipped over our mission. Our mission is to promote a community trauma awareness through healing, education, action, and leadership. And then our vision is to create a community that cares for itself. I want to welcome you. I'm glad to be a part of Sarasota Strong. I work with the healing group. So those of you that are interested in our healing services and anything that we have to do, I'll give you more information about that in just a second. But what can you do? I know that you're out there and you're wondering, now, how can I join this awesome organization, right? And help us out. You can be a part of our conversation and just join our monthly community forums like this one that we're having tonight to become a part of a trauma-informed, resilient Sarasota. Or you can join one of our working groups or register for a workshop or training, and that is found at our website, www.srqstrong.org. Or you can email Annalise at sarasotastrong@gmail.com. Our topics are driven by you. So tonight I want you to think about some conversation you would like to have so that helps us out with setting up our forum. So we need your feedback because we don't want to just make up stuff that we think the community needs. We want to know what you want to hear about. So please let us know by, like I said, sarasotastrong@gmail.com, and let us know what you'd like to know. Please mute your microphones as you're coming in. Thank you.
You don't have the right to be capital.
Thank you. Okay, tonight's featured speakers join us from Selah Freedom. And I want to stop for a second and talk about Selah Freedom. I worked for an organization a few years back, and I went into, we heard about Selah Freedom, and we went and started doing our support groups using the 3 principles. I was the main key person that went into the Brandon location, as well as went into Sarasota and worked a couple of times. I love the Selah Freedom. I love what they do for the clients there. It is an awesome program. So I've worked inside. So when I was told that that Selah Freedom was coming, I immediately wanted to be the speaker, the moderator, to be a part of this, because that is an awesome, awesome organization. And I just want to throw that out there. And not because of that, but because I know personally, I'm talking from personal experience of working with them. So Selah Freedom and More to Life, 2 local organizations actively working towards eliminating human trafficking. The trauma of human trafficking may also be accompanied by mental health issues, domestic violence, substance abuse, racism, or a combination of these and more. And the experience of human trafficking can set people up for additional trauma in the future. Our first speaker is Selah Freedom's Southeast Prevention Coordinator, Kyra Montaque. She works to prevent and equip not only children, but also adults with the knowledge that is needed to end sex trafficking and exploitation. Now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over and let Kyra tell us about the importance of prevention education. Kyra.
Hi. I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to join this platform. I want to tell you guys the importance of prevention education. We're one of the 4 arms that Selah Freedom has. Selah Freedom has 4 arms that help bring about awareness to sex trafficking so that we can end exploitation. So prevention is one of those arms. We also have an advocacy and awareness arm. We have a residential arm, and we also have an outreach arm. So this is just one arm. So I'm going to focus on the prevention side of things, because we always like to say that if we work hard enough and we get in front of the issue, then we can shut the other arms of Selah Freedom down. We wouldn't need a residential program or a safe housing program. We wouldn't need an outreach program because we're getting in front of the issue. So I really, truly believe in education. My heart is with youth. And so our mission for Selah Freedom is to put an end to sex trafficking, and prevention supports this mission by creating and offering innovative programs that we can bring into all levels of our youth. So from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our programs. But the first thing that I want to get into is why it's so important. So you guys, as you're looking at the next slide, human trafficking is one of the fastest growing epidemics worldwide. If you sit and think for a second, you know, what other world epidemics can you think of? Things like drug trafficking, gun trafficking, ideas like that might come to mind. Well, human trafficking is beating, it's passing these other world epidemics. And why is that? Well, there are a number of reasons that I could connect to why this is happening.
Okay, it's on, but I can't get it on.
Someone,
Excuse me, please mute your microphones. Thank you.
oh. So one of the reasons that I want to talk about is just the idea of being bought and sold. So when we think about trafficking and we think about what we like to call a survivor or victim, this person, a person itself, can be bought and can be sold a number of times in one day. And so when we think about other worldwide epidemics like drugs or guns, a person is not selling drugs and then asking that person that bought those drugs to share them with their neighbor. But that idea can happen when we're talking about humans. And the survivors that we connect with within our programming have reported being bought or sold anywhere between 15 and 40 times in one day. And so because this world epidemic is growing so fast, and that's just one reason, I'm sure that you guys could put your mind to a number of other reasons why it's growing so exponentially. But this is why we have to be having this conversation with our young people. And this is why education and prevention education is so important. So as you look at this next slide, I want to get into a little bit why, you know, the fact that we're connecting with our youth, and the reality is that sex trafficking is reported in all 50 states. It's a grave human rights violation. All of our kids are affected by this. You know, our neighbors, the kids that are in our schools, elementary, middle school, high school. So child sex trafficking is reported in all of our states. This is not this overseas thing, not that it's not happening overseas, but this isn't an entity that we can put our minds from because it's happening way far away from us. This is happening in our backyards to our children. And that's why this is so important. So as you're looking at the next slide here I have for you guys, the reality is that approximately 2 million children are exploited in the global sex trade. So that's all over. And at Selah Freedom, we like to say that if even this number was one, if this number said one child, then that's one too many, and we still need to be having this conversation, and we still need to be fighting this battle. But the reality is that it's approximately 2 million children across this world. So that's not just one child. And like I said, these are children that we know. These are our neighbors. These are our kids that are in our elementary, middle schools, and high schools that are being affected by this. So as you're taking a look at the next slide I have for you guys, the reality is that there is a root cause to all of this. And one of the root causes that we talk about within our prevention education is childhood sexual abuse. So our research shows us that 1 out of 10 children are going to experience some sort of sexual abuse before the age of 18. And so the reality is that this can come as young as 1, 2, 3 years old. And there's a lot of changes that can happen within our mindset when we've been a victim of childhood sexual abuse. There are a number of risk factors that can put a young person at risk. But the one thing about sex trafficking is that it does not have a bias towards anything. So it doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic class. All of our young people can be affected by this. And so when you look at this next slide, what I created for you is just a short list.
1 out of 10 children will experience sexual abuse.
Yes, 1 out of 10 children. And so again, this is a part of why we need to be having this conversation, why it's so important that we're connecting. And if I tell you that as young as age 2, 3, I did a training once with a group of adults, and I had a question from one of them, and they said, well, when do we start talking with our kids about this? And I said, well, when do our kids begin to understand language, right? I have 19-month-old twin boys. They understand when I say no and when I say stop, or when I say, let me have that. Like, they understand that. Now, am I talking to them about human trafficking and exploitation at 19 months? No, but they are beginning to understand language. So the earliest we can connect with them in the school system is kindergarten. And even before kindergarten, I would say, because we've done a couple of K, like 4, like pre-kindergarten classes as well, and those go really well. And so we have to begin to talk with our kids about this topic. And no, we're not bringing at the elementary level talking about exploitation or sex trafficking, but we are catering to that age range, that development. So we might be talking about, you know, safe adults and safe screens, because our kids are learning how to operate technology younger and younger and younger. So when do we begin having this conversation? Well, we begin when our kids are beginning to understand language. So we could stop the bullet point that we have here at the very first one. So all of our kids are at risk because they're all under the age of 18. But then, of course, there are other things that can play a factor. One of the ideas that we talk about within our prevention education is vulnerabilities, right? And that we all have them. Wanting to be loved can be a vulnerability, or even a death in the family. There can create a vulnerability based off of that. You know, growing up around substance abuse issues. If I have a parent who is an alcoholic or who does drugs right in front of me, these are things that can create vulnerabilities within kids, which can actually open them up to being even more vulnerable. So besides the fact that I'm under the age of 18, I have access to technology, I have a phone, a computer, access to, you know, screen time. All of these obviously are vulnerabilities, but then, you know, we can break it down even more to these other ideas like wanting to be loved, or, you know, addiction, loss of a parent, racism, classism, sexism. All of these things can also put us even more at risk, besides the fact that they're young people, they're kids, and so they're at risk, period. So as you put your eyes on this next slide that I have for you guys, I wanted to bring about this idea of sexualization and what our kids are seeing day in and day out. They're bombarded by this, what we call the land of the sexualized child, because we can think about magazines, we can think about movies, we can think about TV shows that our kids are watching. And a couple of these, if you're not familiar, I've got a couple references to some shows on here. So one is Stranger Things, and the bottom left corner, you see a picture of Millie Bobby Brown. So if I have any Stranger Things fans, she is 11 from Stranger Things. That's her character's name. And she was posted when she was about 14, 15 years old. She was posted on a magazine, and the title of it was Why TV is Sexier Than Ever. So we are referencing a 14, 15-year-old young kid, and the title of it is Why TV is Sexier Than Ever, right? And maybe, you know, we wouldn't think twice about it. It wouldn't cause any concern for us. You know, we wouldn't blink our eye to it. But there are these ideas, they're in front of our kids all the time. Even if you go straight to the top, so the top left picture, if you are a TLC, Toddlers and Tiaras fan, there was a woman that was on that show, and she dressed her toddler up as the world famous prostitute, Julia Roberts, right? Pretty Woman, because we all know that the idea behind that movie is 100% accurate, right? And if you can't feel my sarcasm, I'm being very sarcastic right now, because the reality is that movie and the way that it portrays Julia Roberts and her portrayal of being a prostitute, okay, is not accurate to what we know. You're not going to find a John that's going to sweep you off your feet and, you know, and carry you to, you know, the promised land. This is not reality, but these are the types of movies that we see, movies like even Taken, for example. So this mother thought in her mind, you know, Toddlers and Tiaras show, it's a show about young kids that they're like, you know, in beauty pageants. And she dressed her toddler up as a prostitute. And so these are the ideas, and I could keep going all the way around this to show you all of these different ideas. Even if you look at right in the middle, the image that's right in the middle, it almost looks like I'm peeking through a doorway. And this particular magazine, if you looked at it right away, it might not immediately pop up to you what is being advertised here, but what's being advertised are the handbag and the shoes. So this model that looks to me very young, looks like I'm peeking through the door of like a brothel room. It looks to me like she might even be laying on some sort of bed. What's actually being sold is the purse that she's holding, and she's advertising for her shoes. So again, these are just a couple of examples. And if you're looking at the bottom right, that's American Apparel. Bottom right, I call American Apparel habitual offenders because you can find so many different images, even if you just go to their site, the way they advertise their clothing, the idea of sex selling, that's what it looks like they're selling. And I can't tell you how many high school and middle school rooms I've been in and that they can call it just that. They're like, well, sex sells, miss. So our young kids know this and they understand this. Even the only adult that's on here, Jennifer Anderson, excuse me. The only adult that's on here, even she is being portrayed in this visual as being young, like childlike almost, because what we see is, sorry. So what we see is her dressed up in a nightie, like looking young. She's got a teddy bear. So even in this portrayal that we have in this advertisement media, we have the only adult that's on here even being portrayed as a child. And you could look at the bottom middle one and you can see even in that one, it says loves baby soft because innocence is sexier than you think. And that's clearly a very young child. So I show you this so that you can see just in a snapshot, this idea of the land of the sexualized child, because our young kids are sexualized in different media platforms. And there's a lot of subliminal messaging that can come from this, even when our young kids see this in other young kids. That standard, if you will, makeup, hair, accessories, things like that, something to live up to or to idealize, right? So these are the kinds of conversations when we're going into high schools that we're having with kids is what's this idea behind what media portrays, and you'd be really shocked some of the stuff you hear from teens about their impression of imaging like this. So as you're looking at the next slide, I just want to kind of show you in this slide the progression of the demand, right? Because pornography and trafficking, sex trafficking, they go together. And whereas at one time, the way that we see our image on the left of this model and the way that she's dressed, at one point that was very scandalous, right? You could only see it in like magazines. You might have had to sneak the magazine. You probably couldn't like purchase it, but maybe a friend's dad had one. And so that's the way you kind of went about being able to see images like these. Well, now our kids, all they have to have is a device. That's it. And Pornhub is the example that we're giving because we know that our kids are connecting on Pornhub. They know what pornography is. Teen pornography is one of the most watched, and teen girl pornography, let me be very clear, is one of the most watched types of videos that are searched. And so what we find is that our young kids are taking cues from other young kids. And so when we're connecting, even through like adult trainings, one of the things that we encourage our adults to have conversations about with their youth is pornography and the correlation. We don't know the story behind the camera. We don't know if this person in this video that we're watching is a willing participant. And I've never heard anybody say, I think I'll sit down and watch someone be raped today, or I think I'll watch someone be sexually assaulted today. I've never heard anybody say that before, but the reality is that if we don't know if this person is consenting, then we don't actually know their story. We have to be having these tough, sometimes, conversations with our young people, because if we don't, they will. So they will have this conversation with each other. They will share information with one another, regardless if the adult in their life talks with them about this. So who better to hear from? Do we want our kids learning from our kids, or do we want our kids learning from the safe adults that are in their life? And moving you into the next slide, what I want to kind of give you a grasp of is the range of prevention education that we offer. We have a wonderful connection with Sarasota County Schools, where they do allow us to come in and offer our prevention education as an organization. We're an option. So we're not the only option. We're not the only people that can come in. Not all Sarasota County schools reach out to us and connect with us about prevention programming, but they have the option too. We are written within their what do they call it? Their school, like, information as far as like what they're doing in regards to the rule that has been implemented in Florida schools requiring K through 12th grade prevention education in human trafficking to be present. So we're written in there as a source for schools. So we have prevention education, like I was telling you guys before, K through 12th grade. We start at the elementary level with our K through 2nd safety education. We move into 3rd through 5th pause. Both of these trainings all of our trainings are catered to an age level. So when we're coming into the elementary level, like I said before, we're talking about safe adults. We're talking about safe screens, the use of technology. We're talking about safe touch, the idea of what is safe touch. We're talking about safe speech, how to use our voices. So we're coming in age appropriate, and we do this through an interactive coloring book with our kids. So when we leave, they get to keep their coloring book. They can share with their safe adults at home what they learned. And we also leave them with the crayons that they use during this training. We have a wonderful partnership with 50 Eggs and My Life, My Choice that created I Am Little Red to offer this training in Florida. So I Am Little Red tells the story of like a modern day Little Red Riding Hood, and how any of us, girl, boy, young teen, older teen, can be a little red. And the wolves that they have within the actual presentation are like traffickers or exploiters, and they come in she-wolf version, and they come in the male wolf version, because we know that traffickers don't just come in one look, that it can be a woman trafficker. And so it's really important that even in at the middle school level, that our kids recognize traffickers don't look a certain way. And they can embody different things. They might try to befriend you, build a relationship with you, and then exploit you, and what that can look like. So we do that through a cartoon that we show. It's like a 10-minute cartoon. And then we have activities prior to the cartoon showing the middle school classes. And then we have activities that we do as a follow-up as well. Our 6 through 12 trainings come differently. We have Freedom for Teens, Sex, Lies, and Media that we offer middle school. Both of them are really good trainings for this level, anywhere 6th to 12th grade, just catering it slightly, changing it if we're in a 6th grade versus a 12th grade class, but really talking about, what exploitation is, what is sex trafficking, where is it happening, how can it happen? So talking about social platforms, and we always say we're not the social media police. We're not telling our kids not to be on it, but we do want them to be safe when they're on it. And we want them to recognize the game that can be present on these social platforms. So what does a recruitment page look like on Instagram? When someone is messaging me in my DM box and they're having conversations about, can I send them a picture of my feet? Can I connect with them on this social app? Like, these are conversations our kids are having. I can't tell you how many high schools and middle schools I've been in, and I've heard stories about the people that slid into the DM box, which is the direct messaging box, and the conversations that they were having with these young kids. So we want our kids to be armed and equipped with the knowledge that's needed and the tools that are needed, so that if they find themselves in a situation or they're navigating into a situation that's going left, what can they do? What do I do? What are the signs? What should I be looking out for? So these are all the conversations that we're having. And then these are 12th grade only trainings that we offer, which is caught up in hashtag relationship goals. We have a partnership with Infinity Films in California to bring Caught Up here to the state of Florida. And we created a curriculum in-house titled hashtag relationship goals. So Caught Up shows the very real, raw, realistic story of a protagonist named Mia. And our young people that are watching this training actually get to see what Mia goes through. She watches her mom trafficked. She watches her mom die. She ends up in the foster care system. She meets a recruiter who idealizes what being in the life looks like, and she gets caught up in that way. She meets another character, Jamal, and starts a relationship with him. She thinks he's her boyfriend. Then he starts to traffic her. So they actually get to see what this looks like. And then what we have in between the short clips that we show is teaching and education pieces and components. We call them tips within the training itself. So we go through different tips at each stage of Mia's life so that they can see the raw, realistic view of what being in the life can look like. Because those recruitment pages that are on Instagram, they fantasize what the life really looks like, the stacks of cash, the expensive meals, the expensive shoes. It's not the reality of what it looks like. And so we want to show them what's real. And then hashtag relationship goals focuses all around what being in a healthy relationship looks like, healthy versus unhealthy relationships, you know, how they can be formed, the time that it takes to build upon a relationship, and what that looks like, aspects of it. We use like an iceberg model where 90% of the relationship is under the surface. You only really see 10%. So, you know, you meet someone on, you know, a social platform, you don't know that person, right? Just from meeting them, just from talking with them for a few weeks. What does a relationship mean? And we talk about romantic and platonic relationships because we know that recruitment can happen, peer-to-peer recruitment can happen at the same age level. And these recruiters are not trying to build a romantic relationship with that person necessarily, but they're trying to build a relationship. So what does that mean? What do those things look like? So all of these aspects focus right back around to sex trafficking, us highlighting it, working towards eliminating it, giving our young kids the tools that are necessary so that they feel equipped and they feel empowered to navigate life in the best possible way and not ending up in situations that could lead them towards becoming victimized in some way. And so the very last slide that I have for you guys as I am closing out my part is just contact information for Selah Freedom. I also can share my direct email if anyone, and I'll type this in the chat right now so that you have it. If you are thinking about, you know, a school in Sarasota, wondering if we've connected, we have connected with a few, not all of them by any means, but we're more than happy to connect with them. If you have a school in mind, if you just want to reach out for a training, maybe you have, you know, a neighborhood and you're like, hey, I can get a group of kids together, we need to have this conversation, then please connect with us. So we have our Selah Freedom website on here. We do a number of trainings, public trainings that we offer. We've offered a few of them for Human Trafficking Awareness Month, which we're in right now. And we have several more coming up. They're free trainings through Eventbrite, but you can find them on our Selah Freedom website. So www.selahfreedom.com, and then go to prevention trainings, and you'll find all the trainings that we have coming up for the future as well. And then of course the human trafficking information, because if this is happening, then we do want to make sure that we're reporting it. And that is the best place to report it, is the human trafficking hotline. And you can also text that hotline, and you can submit information anonymously as well. So, and I got a private message in the chat, so I just want to respond to it in case anyone else is thinking it, but we do offer all of our trainings in Spanish. So if you are, you know, at a school and need, you know, this presentation in Spanish, or you have a community organization, a church, anywhere where you're like, you know, we'd like this, but we need it in Spanish, we do have all of our trainings are translated to be offered in Spanish as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kyra. That was very enlightening and very helpful to us.
Awesome.
Also, just to reiterate, we will have a Q&A session at the end after all the presenters have already went. And you will also, everyone that's on will get all the resources and the information for the presenters in the email after this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And now we would like to go on and bring up Kim Squires. She's a survivor champion and currently serving as a survivor member at More to Life Foundation. in partnership with the Open Doors Outreach Network. She is a renowned speaker and advocate in Florida on the national level. So Kim, take it over.
Hi.
there. Yeah.
Hey, you want to go ahead, Son? Well, first, it's a pleasure for you all having me on here. It's nice to meet everyone. Me and Dawn's actually going to be co-hosting together, so.
Yeah, well, hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Kyra, for that great presentation. Prevention is definitely key to prevent this from continuing in our communities. My name is Dawn Sakes. I'm a regional advocate with More to Life in partnership with Open Doors Outreach Network. And we're happy to be here with you today. We can go to the next slide. So More to Life is a survivor-led organization. We were founded by Dr. Brooke Bello, who survived sex trafficking as a child. We focus on anti-sexual violence, human trafficking, and youth crime prevention. And our primary focus is on mentoring and identity discovery and the legacy of fatherhood. One of the things that Dr. Bello wanted, she wanted to create this organization because she didn't have a mentoring program when she was a victim. And she wanted to create something that could be there that could help kids really truly discover who they are. One of the things that she says that I think that is so powerful for people to hear is she talks about when people are sexually assaulted or they're exploited, it's soul assassination. You lose a part of who you are. And so she truly wanted to create something where they could be mentored back to really, what are their goals? What are their dreams? And help people realize that they have dreams and goals and that they can move forward in life and become self-sufficient adults. So we mentor and educate those affected by human exploitation to empower them to discover their authentic self, thereby commanding them to take charge of their future. Part of that is our partnership with Open Doors Outreach Network, which really creates a system. It has allowed us to expand our services into 6 counties. So we're currently in Sarasota, Manatee, Pinellas, Hillsborough, Hernando, and Pasco counties. And then we're also doing a lot of work down in the Miami-Dade area. So through the Open Doors Outreach Network, we primarily serve victim services to youth and young adults ages 10 to 24. And they're really wrapped around services with a survivor mentor, which is what Kim's role is she's a survivor mentor. So she's really the one, she's doing the day-to-day mentoring with these youth to help them identify what their needs are, help them identify their goals. We are 24/7. And then we have regional advocates, which that's pretty much, we're the advocates. We go out, we connect with the community, we provide resources to the survivor mentor. We partner with the survivor mentor to help them identify those needs, to connect them to whatever services there are. And then we have a licensed mental health clinician on our staff as well. And so if that individual is ready for therapy, then they can be supported by that clinician. We can go to the next slide. So I know many of you probably are aware of what human trafficking is, but I do want to just go really quickly into the definition. So with adults, there's some sort of, it usually involves force, fraud, or coercion, plus a commercial sex act to equal human trafficking. And now you can go to the next slide. With a minor, there does not have to be the force, fraud, or coercion. If there's a commercial sex act, I apologize, my dog. I'm sure y'all heard this squeaky. You don't have to have that force, fraud, or coercion. If there's a commercial sex act and there's any kind of exchange, it could be an exchange of a piece of candy or a place to stay. You know, Kyra talked about the vulnerability. So a lot of time youth, young adults, especially if they're in foster care, they may not have a place to stay, but someone will promise them a place to stay in exchange for sex, and that in itself will equal the commercial sexual exploitation of a child. You can go to the next slide. All right, Kyra talked about some of the childhood experiences, specifically sexual abuse. That is a high common issue. And then also physical abuse, parental neglect or abandonment, a lot of time spent as kids who are running away or leaving their current living situations for whatever reason that may be. There may be the abuse in the home. There may be parents struggling with addiction. So they're leaving whatever situation they're in. They may be in foster care. They may be getting lured away from a trafficker, or they sometimes homelessness from aging out of foster care. A lot of times youth age out of foster care and unfortunately end up into homelessness, and sometimes those numbers are up to 50%. And then also fatherless childhood. A lot of our youth, young adults we've worked with, they don't have a significant male role model in their life and they're seeking that. They seek that attention from a male figure. And then we talked about the experience with foster care and then experience with the juvenile justice system. All right, so we're going to go over the myths. Human trafficking does not occur in the United States. It only happens in other countries. I know many of you on this call are aware that it happens in the United States. I was meeting with someone last week we were talking about the issues, and they were like, oh my gosh, you just would never think that would happen here. So it does. And I'm going to turn it over to Kim to talk about some of those areas.
Yeah, so we absolutely know it's a myth because it's happening right here, just as Kyra said, in our own backyard. So with that being said, I want to give you a little bit of a perspective from a survivor that actually lived and I walked in those shoes. So growing up for me, I hit every single one of those points on there. I grew up in a home where I was physically, mentally, verbally, and sexually abused. Of course, that would lead to, me going in and out of foster care system. And eventually I would start racking up a lengthy DJJ sheet where I was considered a trouble youth. But really, I was just crying out for help, and the system, still even now, we have that gap where they refuse to see that there's something broken inside the home. There's something broken inside this child to where this kid just might not be a troubled youth. So I ended up spending most of my life in and out of DJJ cells and maximum secured lockdown facility programs. And then after basically aging out of my last program, there was no system in place. There was absolutely no, home for me to return to that would keep me safe. So I go back home into the same situation that I literally just left from. And at this time, I'm almost aging to an adult. I'm like 16 years old, and my mom's like, no, you're on your own now. Now you're taking care of yourself. You can't be here anymore. So anyways, it goes back to what Dawn was just explaining to you all. I pretty much aged out of the system into homelessness because she's telling me I'm on my own. Homelessness would then lead me to couch surfing, survival sex, doing whatever I had to do to be able to feed myself and to have somewhere to sleep at night. And then eventually it wound up landing me into the hands of the trafficker because he told me 3 words, and that's all it took to sweep me up off my feet was, "You are beautiful." And he groomed me for 3 weeks, pretended to be my boyfriend, and it led me into almost 6 brutal years of being trafficked and losing my life. So again, it comes back to that soul assassination that Dawn covered on. You lose a part of you. You lose a part of you. So it's just kind of putting a face with what we're talking about here tonight.
All right. You can go to the next slide. All right, myth number 2, only women and girls can be victims of sex trafficking. There's so much research that still needs to be done on this, but we know as advocates that there are many young boys and young adult males, or males in general, that are not getting identified, or they don't oftentimes identify themselves as a victim. And especially when you're LGBTQ, you're specifically vulnerable to this issue. But there are studies that show up to half of victims and survivors of sex trafficking are male survivors. All right. And then myth number 3, people being trafficked are physically unable to leave their situations, locked in, held against their will. This is often not the case, but it can be the case. There are absolutely cases where people are not allowed to leave. They are locked in their situations. They can't get out. However, like Kim was mentioning earlier, sometimes they're so manipulated, they're trauma bonded to their trafficker. And sorry about that. My dog's chiming in too. So they're, or you know, they don't have a safe place to stay, or they maybe they're addicted, you know, maybe they're struggling with addiction themselves, and that pimp, that trafficker, is feeding them their drugs, and that they're relying on that oftentimes.
Yeah. Yeah, if I could just add to that, Dawn, I want to personally share just from my experience. I wasn't locked in chains in a basement. I wasn't like hidden behind a door. I wasn't what you see in the movies Taken, as Kyra mentioned. Listen, the fact of it is that I was free every day physically, walking around, going inside the clubs, working, you know, the hotels, the brothels, being transported through planes and buses and cars. I seen people every single day walking in of restaurants and stores and all these community, you know, businesses, and not one person ever looked at me and said, oh, I think she might need help or anything. So it's not about being physically chained. It's about being mentally chained. I was completely trauma bonded to him. I was brainwashed. I had Stockholm syndrome, which I didn't know what any of that was then, but knowing now what it is, I can look back and see where I was physically loose, but I was mentally bound. So again, don't look at it from a perspective like, oh, she's locked in a closet in a basement and that's trafficking. No, trafficking looks like a various different numbers of things, where actually we're walking around every single day, you know, working and doing everything that we need to do. But what you really need to look for is the physical signs of, is she looking down? Is she speaking for herself or he? Is she giving eye contact? Is somebody making decisions for her? You know, these are the questions and these are the things that you need to be asking yourself as you're seeing somebody that could look like a potential victim in the streets. Is, you know, does it look like there's something wrong? You know, does she look, you know, malnutrition? Does she look, you know, it could be a number of different things. So it really comes back to knowing your awareness and knowing your education so that you can be alerted when you see human trafficking. We can move on.
And then traffickers target victims they don't know. One of the areas that I don't feel gets discussed enough, but it is absolutely true. Unfortunately, we have a lot of families that struggle with addiction. They struggle with money, whatever their income. And sometimes families do, unfortunately, traffic their own children. And that does happen here in the United States. We've had youth or young adults that we've worked with that have been trafficked since they were 3, 4, 5 years old. And then also it could be a family friend. It could be your boyfriend that does it. So, yep.
So what I can add to that is I was trafficked inside the home before I was ever trafficked on the outside of the home. And I think that speaks volumes for itself. It comes back to that physical, you know, that sexual abuse inside the home, you know, mom selling me to boyfriends, grandpa and uncle raping me for whatever they wanted in exchange for whatever they thought that could please me or keep my mouth shut. It normally starts inside the home before it ever starts on the outside of the home. So when, you know, the guy at the store approaches me and says that you're beautiful and he wants to be my boyfriend and he's showing me a love and an affection and attention that I've never known, of course, I'm going to immediately engage in that because that already looks normal to me. It's already been happening my whole life.
And that's a lot of times how it happens. So I know we've been talking about all this bad news, but there really are some really good things happening, and specifically in Florida. I always like to say, you know, I know Florida doesn't rank high on many issue areas such as education or some of those areas, but in the world of sex trafficking, we do have some pretty robust laws for to protect children. And I don't know if many of you've heard of the safe harbor laws, but we have some of the most robust across the country. There are still states that actually do not protect children. And I'm going to go into safe harbor laws here in a little bit after this slide, so I can educate you a little more about that. And then we have some excellent organizations responding to this need. You just heard from Selah Freedom. There are so many great organizations across this country. And Sarasota alone, we're really lucky to have 2 wonderful organizations that are hitting different areas of need. And so it's really great to have that here in this area. And then also things like this, priority on awareness and education. People are bringing this to light. You know, the news is starting to cover it. So now we know that this problem exists, and that's how we really start getting things moving forward with prevention and education. All right, so safe harbor laws. In 2012, HB 99 was passed. Prior to this law being passed, a child under the age of 18 could be arrested and prosecuted and charged with prostitution. Because of this law, they were actually deemed necessary of services and deemed as a victim in need of services. So they were allowed, law enforcement, instead of putting them in jail, were allowed to take them to a safe house if available. You can see right there where it says available. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of safe houses at that time specifically for kids. However, this did start that process of establishing those safe housing for them. And then they expanded this law in 2016, and this is when the screening tools for the Department of Children and Families came into place. So for human trafficking, we're all mandatory reporters. If you have suspicion, you can report that to DCF, and then they have a screening tool that they will use in their report. This is the one report that it doesn't have to be a family caretaker or family member in order for them to accept the report. So if there's a suspicion of human trafficking, commercial sexual exploitation of a child, please report that to DCF. Let them do their due diligence to figure that out. And then it also created special trainings for CPIs and case managers. So every child protection investigator that goes in, or case manager that goes in to the Department of Children and Families, or the community-based agency, which is Safe Children's Coalition here, Lutheran Social Services up in Manatee County, then they have to go through a certain training to understand human trafficking. And then it also created minimum standards for foster group homes. In 2016, you guys heard me talk about the Open Doors Outreach Network, and this is just part of that system improvement. So it's great that we have all these laws, but there was still a gap in services. So Voices for Florida, who's our system coordinator, they were approved general revenue to start the Open Doors Outreach Network, which is currently in 32 counties across the state of Florida. So we have network provider organizations in other counties, such in Orlando and Fort Myers, up in Jacksonville. And so if we have a youth, specifically, if there's a youth in foster care, oftentimes they will transition to other counties if there's a placement breakdown. And so if they're working currently with with us here in Sarasota County or one of our counties of service, then they can seamlessly transition into that county and have a team of people to wrap those services around them with the survivor mentor, the regional advocate, and a clinician. And so that has shown really great success, so they don't lose that service once they've been receiving it. And then the contracts were awarded in 2017, and that's when we became the provider for that specific contract. So these are some of the things that we do. We do outreach. We go to court with youth, young adults, or any adult, court advocacy, urgent care and assessment, mental behavioral health management, housing support, and MTL Safe Stay, mentoring and life coaching. And then our founder, Dr. Bello, she's got one prevention side that she does as well, is she targets male buyers. So if they're caught, if there's someone that's caught soliciting and they get arrested, they go through a course which she has created and she teaches, and it's in partnerships with state attorneys' offices here in the Sarasota County area, and then also down in Miami-Dade area, where she speaks to men about basically, about what this does and the impact that this has on not only the youth, young adults, the victims, survivors, but also the community in itself. They had one man that came in and he sat down and he was like, I'm not going to get anything out of this program And by the end of it, he was crying and coming up to her and talking about how important it was for him to be there, and how impactful it was. Another thing that we do, we also do a lot with youth homelessness. That's one of our areas of expertise. We serve as the liaison, or the board member on our Continuum of Care, Suncoast Partnership to End Homelessness here in Sarasota County. We also work very closely with the organizations that are addressing youth homelessness, which Sarasota County has adopted. We have some really good programs in place, such as a youth drop-in center, some transitional housing for youth, and those specific services are offered through Harvest House, Sarasota YMCA, and the Gulf Coast Community Foundation is really the group that spearheaded that. And then also our Open Doors Outreach Network, which I just spoke about. Through our mentoring and education, Dr. Bello has created an educational mentoring approach. So our survivor mentors, all of our mentors, which we all are, we use this curriculum to mentor these youth as we identify those needs, whether it be digital integrity, whether that be trauma bonds like Kim talked about earlier, which that's a lot of what we see. A lot of these youth don't recognize that they're victims. And so they're very trauma bonded to their boyfriend, their mother even, I mean, whomever that person is. And so that there are activities that they can focus on to really start breaking that bond. And it's really fostering that survivor to champion. One of the things that Dr. Bello talks about, and what we strive to not create, but to mentor and support people with, is she talks about victim to survivor, survivor to thriver, thriver to champion. And that's what we want everyone to become champions in their life. And so one of the things that she says is if you don't recognize that you're a victim, then you're still a victim. You can't really move on to that victim to survivor, survivor to thriver, thriver to champion. And so that's what this fosters. This educational program really fosters that, to ignite those values and morals, to create those leaders. That's what we want. We want leaders in this community. And we all know on this call that so many of these people, yes, them, Kim. Are you want to pop in?
I was just saying yes. Yes. Out of victim stage.
Yes. And that's a lot of what we educate and work with them on. And we've had youth say to us, because when you educate them, I've had a young lady come to me and she says, I really recognize that this guy was grooming me. I wouldn't have known that had I not received that education and that mentoring to realize and recognize that this guy was grooming me. And I'm sure, Kim, you have a lot of stories with that as well, if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a particular youth I've been working with for a couple years. Give or take, she's worked with a lot of our team members, but I'll give you a brief snippet of it. She came to our program not knowing what human trafficking was, not understanding any awareness about it, not knowing the red flags, didn't even know she was a victim, because let's just face it, a lot of us don't even identify what the terminology of human trafficking is. So I had to sit down, saturate her with, mentoring in our Living Above the Noise curriculum, and really just sit there and teach her what all this looked like, what human trafficking looks like, so that she could be aware not only for herself, but the beauty of it is she is now teaching others in her community, her peers in school. She has now been able to save herself from being trafficked again, because she got a job in a local mall and some guy walked up to her and tried to groom her and traffic her for a second time. And this young lady knew the signs of human trafficking due to our program, saturating her with the mentoring and the curriculum for the last 2 years. And she saved herself from human trafficking. And let me tell you something, that is the proudest thing as a mentor to a mentee that you can have on your chest, is to know that you've educated someone so well that they've been able to walk away from somebody that was trying to groom them and assassinate them once more time in their life. So it's like, it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I have lots of stories, and I mean, this is what I do for. This is why the fire burns inside me. This is why I'm so passionate about going back out there and getting the other girls and boys that are still waiting to have a hand to pull them up, because there's more out there to be saved. I could just preach on this for hours though, but it's a beautiful sight. It's a beautiful sight. So that's just one scenario.
Yes. And then another part of that purpose is to stimulate an emotional shift that really removes the guilt from any kind of childhood violence or trauma. So many, I'm sure many of us on this call have dealt with guilt and shame, and that prevents us from moving forward. And so really teaching them how to let go of that guilt and shame, and letting them know that you're a beautiful human being, you know. It's like, okay, so we made some decisions, or this happened to me, whatever it is that you did, you're still an amazing human being, and that cannot prevent you from moving forward. And we talked about the identity discovery and personal development. As far as these are some of the sessions that this curriculum explores. The world views on human trafficking and sexual violence. You know, Kyra talked about the sexualized, just the advertisements and the movies and all of that. One of the activities that we also look into pop culture, like with music. If you ever take some of the music that our children are listening to, and you break down those lyrics and really listen to what they're saying, it's not positive images for women. It's calling them the B word, or it actually fosters that pimp culture that a woman, if you look at music videos, a lot of times there's videos that portray that there's like all these women and a few men dancing around, so it really fosters that culture. And then we also focus on early warning signs and prevention methods, internet safety, and integrity with exposures to the world through technology. Kyra also connected on that piece of it too, just how people are getting recruited on social media. It used to be here in Sarasota, the Strip. People would talk about, not the Strip, but the trail, which was 41, where people, you know, where women being exploited would be out on the streets. That it doesn't quite look like that so much anymore. And we have kids that have been groomed or recruited on gaming systems. A lot of people may not think about gaming systems. They're, you know, a lot of these gaming systems, people are talking to each other in different countries, different states. And we've had youth being recruited into other states from this area through those gaming systems. And then of course, I don't know if you've, you know, when you're on Instagram, for example, when some people will post pictures, you'll see people will say DM, you know, let's collab, you know, whatever that is. And I'm sure some of those are legit sites. But some of those sites I've gone to, and they're advertising clothes, but it really, you know, they're advertising something, but it doesn't even show the outfit and the kid. And sometimes these models look very young, similar to the one that Kyra was talking about. Leadership and cultural influences. Yes, I see a comment, YouTube comments. It's everywhere. You have to be aware of it just being everywhere. And then detaching from gang or pimp culture and the necessary skills to enter a new life. You know, Kyra talked about, you know, it being, you know, you can sell drugs once, but you can sell a female over and over and over again. And pimps are starting to get that idea, and they're in gangs. And so if there's ever any kind of gang affiliation, if you have suspicion of a child, youth, young adult being affiliated with a gang, they are likely being trafficked. And I
was just going to say, Dawn, if I could just add one thing to that. When you talk about pimp and gang culture, if I could put you inside of a mind of a trafficker for just 10 seconds, their whole MO is to find out his or her vulnerabilities, right? Because we have male and female victims. Find out their vulnerabilities, play in on them vulnerabilities, brainwash their minds, break them down, mold them into the way they want them, trauma bond them to them. And that creates, once they have them trauma bonded, it creates loyalty. Loyalty comes with creating her to be a bottom. A bottom is a recruiter. Then it's somebody who's micromanaging him, you know, the stable, the rest of the girls in, you know, in his flock while he's out getting more. So again, it comes back down to, he looks at her as a product, something I didn't bring up because there's just not enough time to share my whole story. I was branded. I am no longer considered in trafficking, right? That's what they do. They brand their product. You're not a female no more. I wasn't Kim Squires no more. I was a product to him. I was how much he could sell me for every single time. So then, therefore, they either brand you with their name, their barcodes, their symbols. You know, there's many different things that they use, but those are things to be looking out for too, is branding. So that's a whole nother conversation, but it comes back to how a trafficker's mind is truly wired. She's a product. She's no longer somebody's daughter, mother, sister, cousin. She doesn't exist as a person or a human being anymore. And that's their thought process.
Yeah. All right, we can go to the next slide. I think that's the last slide right there. Yep, you can connect and make referrals. Visit our website. We're also available to talk to anyone. And then also, what's really exciting too is we have a digital app and case management system that is in the process of rolling out. And this is an app that is an interactive app that can will have tip lines on it. Our mentors can communicate with the people that we're serving and supporting with their goals. And that is, if you want to learn more about that, you can go to cominghome.app.com, and I'll put that in the chat box too, so you can check that out. And that is available for other organizations if they're looking for any kind of digital case management system. So we will send that out in the chat.
All right, thank you so much, Don and Kim. Kim and Don, that was just awesome. And Kyra, I just want to say, Kim, thank you for giving other people hope. I hope that since it's going out on Facebook and everything, that there's maybe someone watching that's going through what you've been through, and you've given them hope that they can be on that other side to be that person. I could just feel your energy as how you're on a mission. This is your purpose. Sometimes on a mission. We go through things and we don't realize that it's to help somebody else. And I just, hats off to you. That's all I can say. Hats off to you. And to Kyra and Don for the information of so much is happening, because I really didn't know that much, because a lot of the questions and answers, we're at our question and answer and comments segment, and so many of that questions and answers that have been even sent in have already been answered by all the wonderful information that you gave us. So I have some that were sent in, but I'm gonna check the chat. I don't know if I can check it there and see if we had any questions that may not be on our, if I can roll back, because I think some started out a little early. Take a look here. While I'm looking through the chat, let me give you one that came through for a survey, and either of you three can answer. One was, how can we help? What actions can we as the community take? So while you all look at that, I'll try to see if I can find some more questions in the chat. So either one of you can answer.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, how you can help is doing awareness events like this. You know, find an organization that you feel passionate about, donate to that organization, volunteer, raise awareness with your family, your friends. You know, just start bringing awareness to that. You know, a lot of times people will donate certain things for our young ladies or young men. They will donate like birthday gift bags, or, you know, whatever that is, like whatever you're able to do, do that, and continue to just keep raising awareness. And
okay, another question we have in the chat, I think this might be towards Kyra, is this curriculum, I think it was at the time that you were speaking, available to schools outside of Florida?
So the only prevention education we do are our Zoom trainings that we have through Eventbrite. So we still do those outside of Florida. The education that I showed you guys, we are doing that in Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, and Sarasota and Manatee, and we're working on Pasco right now. So yeah.
Okay. And we have another question from the chat, and it's saying, is there any point in time you find having these conversations too early with some individuals who may have this connection to the family can cause a youth to seek this out?
So I think that you always want to consider, you know, stability is a huge thing for youth. If you want to first of all make sure that they're stable and that they have everything that they need. If you're looking at that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you want to make sure that those basic needs are met. I don't know if you're talking about a youth that's in school, but or specifically someone who is being exploited. But you know, it's really based on the individual. Like you want to assess where they are specifically, Kim, and if you want to jump in here too, because you deal more so directly with the kids and young adults than I do. It's really just meeting them where they're at and making sure that they're ready. We never force anybody to tell us their complete story ever. That is something that they have to do on their own time. And if they don't want to tell us, they don't tell us. And it's really based on their need.
So, I mean, as we mentioned, I'll just briefly jump in here. As we mentioned, you know, during the time that we had to share, we serve ages primarily, especially for me, because I'm underneath ODON and More to Life Foundation. So I serve basically ages 10 to 24. We do serve outside of that age range, but that's our other program. So what I do, and the reason why I bring that up is because what I'm going to teach a 10-year-old and how I'm going to mentor a 10-year-old is totally different than what I'm going to teach and how I'm going to mentor a 24-year-old. So again, it comes back to, and I think Kyra touched on it really well, it comes back to age appropriation. I will go on the internet, I will find YouTube videos, cartoons, whatever I've got to find to gear it towards that age group, and then go from there. And again, it comes back to getting to know them, having a relationship with them first. One thing I never do when I go into my mentoring is, oh, let me hear your story, like what you've been through. Like, no, that doesn't work. That don't work. Don't do that, because at the end of the day, we don't trust people anyways. So you just created a huger barrier between me and you, and your likelihood of me ever talking to you now is slim to nothing. So the first thing you ever want to do is once again, it's just about having a relationship with that person and cultivating, you know, what you want there. Because if a person feels comfortable with you and they've earned your trust, you'll naturally open up to them. So again, it's finding age appropriate material and just really being there to support them with their needs, what they need at that current moment. And a lot of times they just, I mean, they're just like mush. They just open right on up. I mean, they want somebody to give them the support and the love and to give them, you know, the services that they really are crying for. It's a matter of doing things on their timing and actually being victim-centered and survivor-led. I swear it works. And I've seen nothing else work besides being that, letting them lead, and supporting them exactly where they are. I have girls right now that I am supporting and mentoring that are still in the life, that are still going back and forth, you know, and it's not a thing where you're like, okay, oh, you want to go back? I'm done with you. No, you meet them right where they are and let them know that they are loved and they are cherished right where they are, and that you're still standing here and you're going to mentor them and you're going to support them whether they're out of the life or they're in the life, because they need to know that it's not based off of actions, that you're here, you're going to be here. Stability comes back to what Dawn said. So again, it's another topic that I can run on and on with. So just being age appropriate.
Right. Thank you, Kim. And another question that was asked was, will this be recorded? Yes, this will be recorded, and it will be available on SRQ Strong, Facebook, and also on our website. That was one of the questions. Let's see if we can slide down. Another one that we got, and I think you might have touched on this. They were kind of similar. How can we as individual citizens help in the fight against human trafficking? So I know you said like doing programs like this, but what can, say if I'm an individual that wants to do something to help, how can a person by themselves help even with your organizations? What are things that you need?
One of the things I'll add to what Dawn said, because I think she hit it really well when she answered it the last time, is having this conversation. So one of the things we say at the end of our presentations with our adults is that it's a domino effect. If every single person in here goes and just talks to 2 people about what we talked about today, that is spreading the word. Then you tell that person, go have this conversation with someone else. There's a lot of power in that. Having this conversation and talking about this more is what's going to help this end. The fact that now we can drive down and see billboards that are talking about human trafficking and have the number where to call, that's big. That hasn't always existed. And so having this conversation, opening up those doors, not being afraid to have this conversation with our kids, and being age appropriate when we have it, that's what's going to change this thing around. And then for organizations, I know for us, for Selah Freedom, you can visit our website or even just message me. And I'm more than happy to share like individual items that we use for our survivors, that we use with our survivor mentorship program that we have. We are contracted through Heartland. And so we only serve youth survivors in that area. So we're not as big as More to Life in that area. But I'm more than happy to share those things with individuals that are interested in that information.
Okay. All right. I have another question here. It says, my 12-year-old is watching and was headed down a dangerous path with Snapchat. Any advice for her? Anyone that works with kids, any advice for her to kind of help her out?
I can jump in. I mean, just always be aware of what you're doing, of who you're talking to, what you're sending. You just want to make sure that you're just being completely safe in what you're doing. Kim, I know you have teenagers. Do you want to chime in here as well as to maybe what you?
So I know it's geared towards the 12-year-old. But I'm going to back it up just a little bit and start it at the parent, because that's where our culture is messing up. Again, it's not about being the police, as was mentioned today in this presentation, but it is about knowing that your child is a child and you are the adult. And right now, your main priority is to be the adult over the child. That child wants you to protect them and keep structure and boundaries in place. Whether or not they say it or not, that's what they need. So I educate from both standpoints. I educate parents on, being involved, having their phones connected to their children's phones with an app. I have that. So I see everything that's going through. I don't care if it's a text message, a picture, if they're trying to get on a social media app. So I have all that stuff linked to my phone, and I can deny whether or not they're going on it or whether or not they are. And if you're allowing social media, I understand some parents allow it, monitor it, be on top of it, know what your kid is doing, know who your kids are talking to, be engaged, be in their life. And then I also, go out and I mentor, our kids. And what I would say from that perspective is to, sorry, I was reading the chat, Alex. I got distracted. So, yes, my ADD kicked in. What I would say, to your daughter that's watching is, first of all, again, it comes back to, if they're asking you for inappropriate, conversation, pictures, if it's somebody that's way over your age range, it comes back to being internet safe, It's not about saying like, no, you can't be on there and no, you can't use it. But are you being safe using it, So education is key, and knowing your own self-worth and your own self-value, and knowing that if somebody's asking you to do something that doesn't feel comfortable, your value is worth more than that. You're worth more than that, And so that's something that I do a little bit more in my deeper mentoring is, saturating them with understanding of that education piece and why they shouldn't be putting out these pictures, or why they shouldn't be engaging in illicit and exploitation activity. So, I mean, obviously that's a lengthy conversation, but it really does start with the parent of monitoring, and then just being involved, and knowing what your child is doing, because your child's not doing what you're not allowing them to do.
Exactly.
That's what comes down to.
I just want to add on to one thing with what Kim said. Communication and creating a safe space to communicate is really important on the adult side, because what happens with young people is they have maybe the parent that's like, no, 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 don't do. And our kids are going to do exactly what we tell them not to do. And so if we've shut down, it's kind of like saying like, you're never going to be able to date. You can date when you're an adult. Don't even think about it. When you close the door to your child, you close the door to them communicating with you anything about that topic. And also some kids feel like maybe if they have done something they're not supposed to do, they have this fear of, I'm going to get in trouble. So if every time my child that's coming to me says they've done something and now my immediate reaction is to yell at them, to scream at them, how could you, don't be dumb. Why would you do that? That is going to totally close the door off to that kid ever communicating anything with you in the future, because they're gonna know, like, I'm just gonna get yelled at. My parents gonna trip. My background is in teaching. I spent many years in the high school setting. And I can't tell you how many things my kids told me in the safe space that I created in my classroom that they said they could never tell their parent. And the reason was because they were like, we're just going to get in trouble. They're just going to yell. So what's the point of even like having this conversation with them? So as a parent now, because I wasn't a parent then, you have to create a culture, an environment in your home that is safe for a child to feel like they can communicate to you anything. And that means anything. So the stories I've heard, crazy things, but I heard them because my kids felt comfortable enough to be like, Miss Montaque, this is what I'm going through. Like, what do you think? What should I be doing? Kids want to share. They want to open up, but only in places where they feel safe enough to do so.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Another question is there any point in time you found having, I guess you kind of touched on a little bit of this question, these conversations too early with some individuals who may have disconnection to family can cause the youth to seek this out? You know, if they have like a disconnection from their family.
So I don't know that through the education that's what's caused it. It could be something else that has caused, like, if there's a disconnect, then they may not necessarily be seeking it out. It kind of finds them. So that, like, just to change the mindset of like the way the person wrote, it will like hit them. And so through education, what I believe with young people is that when we're educating them, we're empowering them to know. Because if I've never had a conversation about what I would do if I ever got in a relationship with someone and it was going left, like, what would I do? Or what do I want in a relationship? If I've never had those types of conversations, then I may not really know or know how to navigate that. So I feel like through education, through having these conversations, sometimes it's tough, we're opening the door and giving our young kids the tools that they need in order to be successful in life. So not that they're going to go seek it because now I'm talking about it. That's going to hit them regardless if we talk about it or not. So we might as well be the communicators instead of them learning from each other.
Right.
Yep. That's exactly what I was going to touch on. Was the same thing. Was either we're teaching them or their peers are teaching them. So that's how I weigh it. Who do you want to teach your child? You, or do you want them to learn it from their friends? Because they're going to learn it regardless. Right.
Okay, another question. What are signs of grooming? You mentioned grooming. What is the sign of grooming? Anybody know?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from what happens to me. So signs of grooming was, buying me cell phones. He was getting my hair done. He was taking me shopping. He was taking me out to fancy restaurants that I had never been in before. There's multiple signs of grooming, but that's just a handful right there. And you're talking about, a kid that grew up in a home that's never even been on a family vacation. So that was the ultimate icing on the cake for me. After he, was sitting there grooming me for 3 weeks with all these gifts and whining and dining me, right? Then he asked me, did I want to go on vacation? That's how I started being trafficked. That was the gateway right there. Like, hey, let's go on vacation. I'd never been on a family vacation. So of course I'm going to say, yes, I want to go on vacation to a nice Miami beach. Who wouldn't say that? So that, grooming does look different when it comes to online. You're absolutely right. So grooming when I was groomed and what grooming looks like now, because we have a spike in, again, like you all mentioned, the social media, the internet use, it's just totally different. So girls, if you want to jump in here, ladies, that would be awesome. I love to share the floor.
Yeah. So I'll definitely jump in. So on the trafficker abuser side, when we're talking about grooming, this can start with fake relationships. These relationships can begin online, like just simple conversations. Oh my gosh, how are you? You're so pretty. Or how old are you? Or I noticed that you had a bad day at school. Like, I know when I had bad days at school, this is what I did. Like, it's just that simple conversation that can begin. So starting with fake relationships, we also talk about a respect factor. Like if we're meeting someone, they're not respecting boundaries. If they always want to know like where they're at, where that person is going, almost like you got to keep tabs on me. Those could be signs that there is someone that is abusing or trafficking another person. We always say like promising to solve problems or flaunting gifts. Like if I know my kid doesn't have a job and can't afford these things, but they always have new shoes, new clothes, new backpack, that can be a sign that there is somebody in their life that might be grooming them. On the survivor victim side, we talk about lying about their age. So if I know a young person or they have a friend and they're not being truthful, can't get their story straight, we catch them in lies, or they might be dating someone older, you know, where it's like they might be 13, but their boyfriend's 18. Like just beyond the years of what we would accept, especially we know as they're younger, like that age range is usually a lot shorter. If they've got like cuts or bruises, or they're distant from family, if they've got strange tattoos, we say, and Kim brought branding up. So that's exactly what that is. And we talk about how every tattoo has a story. If they're hesitant about telling their story, it might be because it wasn't their option to have. They might not have wanted it. Having those gifts, having things that they can't afford on the other side of receiving those things are also things that we can be looking out for as far as signs go. And even a person's personality shift. Kim brought this up, but if there's someone who is larger than life, full of personality, and then all of a sudden there's a huge shift to the opposite, very quiet, detached, no eye contact, or vice versa, because it can go both ways. But huge shifts in personality can also be signs within a survivor or a victim as well. So those are just a few things that we touch on.
Right, thank you. And we have another one here. Have you done any training for children or teens with intellectual or developmental disabilities?
Yeah, we have within schools. Sometimes schools have a separation with their kids. So they might be in a specialized program. So we have our trainings built out for aid, like we say K through second, third through fifth, but we've done our elementary trainings at a school where the kids were just at a lower developmental level. Like, so they were actually 16, 17 years old, but operating more at a middle school, elementary level. And so still the training that we were doing for them was appropriate for their intellectual ability. So yeah.
Right. Okay. We have a lot of great comments and in the chat. I would like to say this one. I'll speed this one, not all of them. Don't have the time because there's so many coming in. You guys have done a wonderful job. It said this was awesome. I love the fire in the ladies to make a difference. Kim, wish we had time to hear more from you. I feel your fire, and thank you. That was one. But you had so many people saying how wonderful the presentations were. Kim, I would love to hear, a lot of them would love to hear more. Okay, here's another question here. When do you think that the billboards and other informations that's distributed, taught to others will start showcasing the males
They
that
have.
are being trafficked? They have? Okay.
They have. I just created some with our Human Trafficking Statewide Council, and they are up and they are around Super Bowl stadium area. So they are up. So I know they're not everywhere. I would like to see them more, but you know what counts? They are up and they're out there, and they are male victims on there besides females. So we have both. I'm super excited about that.
And you just answered the next question, because it says, are there plans to do things to monitor the Super Bowl? Here, that lots of trafficking goes on. So you just answered the next question that I was going to
all over it. I know all of us organizations are all over it. I know that we're on it. Selah Freedom's on it. I know that In Your Backyard's on it. A21, No More. you know, soap project. That's just to name a few off the top of my head, but don't worry, we've got it covered, and you know, we're going to do the best we can of our efforts to eradicate human trafficking. So we're doing our part. So just ask, what is your part?
Okay.
I'm going to leave you with that. Ask what's your part. Everybody has a part.
All right. Well, we're kind of, our time is winding up, but I do want to get in a couple more. What is your youth training program called that is happening in March? And where can they find more information on that? Did someone mention that in their presentation about a March?
Oh, Helen, that is.
Oh, that's ours. Oh, I'll tell you a little bit about that. Okay. Nah, no problem. I think I'm going to stop. I think I've gotten most of the information. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some information about our stuff that's coming up. That's our Sarasota Strong thing. Again, ladies, I want to say awesome job. Thank you so much for all of you sharing. And let's talk a little bit about what we got coming up. On February, we have 2 forums coming up. Our February, and I think they were asking about our March one that's coming up. So on Monday, February 22nd, from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. again, it will feature what I do, Helen Neal Ali, as I'll be our healing. And it'll be moderated by Dr. Lisa Mary, who will highlight how hard the past year has been on communities of color. For March, we have the subject, and this is probably what they were addressing in the chat, will be raising anti-racist children. And that's going to be Monday, March 22nd from 6 p.m. to 7:30. This conversation will explore the experiences of several different groups working in this space. Registration and information will be shared through SRQ Strong. So you can go on just like you found this. If there's no more questions, I want to say thank you all so much for a wonderful presentation. Are there any last minute things that either one of you say? We have about 5 minutes left if the ladies want to say a last closing remark or not.
Just thank everybody. We, appreciate the platform. This is what spreads this, having conversations about it, engaging with our community about it. And if you're looking to learn more, have any information, please just visit our website.
Okay, and then someone, let me throw this out there. Someone put the youth trauma training program we've been launching in March, and we will be in touch with you about participating. So that might have been the March thing that they were asking about. Anybody else? Donna, Kim, want to say a last minute?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you guys for having us. It was an honor to be on this panel with Selah Freedom, with Sarasota Strong. You guys are doing some amazing work here in our area. And so thank you guys for spearheading that and bringing it to our community.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, with that to do, thank you all so much for joining us here at Sarasota Strong's Forum. And again, we look forward to seeing you next month, like I said, on February 22nd. So we hope to see you there. Thanks again, and have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.